Welcome to A Court of Transformation and Awakening. I'm Lorrie Gray.
And I'm Amanda Grace Harrison.
And in today's episode, we are discussing Book 1, A Court of Thorns and Roses, Chapter 6.
Chapter 6.
Okay, so
Welcome to Prithian. We're here.
We are here. Feyre's been transported, and she gets her first look at things.
At butter yellow daffodils swaying in the balmy breeze, for instance. It's one of those little ones. I can just take that little, almost get a line like that tattooed somewhere on me. So anytime I need just a little whiff of spring air, I'll just think about butter yellow daffodils swaying in a balmy breeze. It'll take me right back there.
Exactly. And and she says this a little bit later, but she says the few stories I'd heard had been wrong.
That was one of my flags too. She's finally like, oh,
maybe not.
She's like, everything I've heard was not true.
Or 500 years of separation had muddled them. Yes, I was still prey, stillborn, weak, and useless compared to them, but this place was peaceful. It was calm.
Mm-hmm. Unless that was an illusion too. I love that her brain is always like, what?
Except
this could be a lie too.
Back to that hypervigilance thing. It's like, if it seems good, it's probably still unsafe, right? Yeah. She's definitely got that. But this is a shock to her from the get-go because every story had been like the entire land is deadly to you. The second you step foot in it. And then she's like, wait, it's spring, it's pretty, it's warm, it
smells good. What is happening?
Dun dun dun.
My reality
is being shaken. Okay, so she goes in to the manor. And I do think this is hilarious that the first thing that he does is takes her in to like, let's sit down and eat. Like, I don't know what he thought was going to happen there. Like, what part of him was like, yeah, that will probably definitely work.
Yeah, he didn't know humans very well, I'm guessing.
No, not so much. So we've got this huge, long table, so much food. Which again, from the get-go, where their family's barely putting food on the table, and there is extra, there is abundance, it is lavish. So she's already seeing, how grand everything is. And, she says, she's like, I never considered how they live today. Like, they just never thought about it. Yeah. And so she's getting this picture. So the land is different. She's already super surprised. And then big surprise, the beast.
Oh, yes.
The beast.
He plopped into the chair, the wood groaning, and in a flash of white light, turned into a golden-haired man.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! It's very, very much to me, of course. Probably everybody, when they read this, isn't so like, oh, Beauty and the Beast.
Exactly.
There he is. There's the man. There's the golden-haired man.
Yeah, I think she was going for that. I think she was...
For sure.
I think that was part of the grand plan. But I do think that the fact that she calls him Beast the entire time and he turns into a man, I think that was all part of the plot to put every one of us to start expecting this to be a Beauty and the Beast story. Very clever.
Even though he turns into the golden-haired man very early his story, as opposed to at the very end turning into a physical golden-haired man.
Yeah. But, it's one of those things where, like, I do genuinely think that this colors my interpretation of everything that happens because we're expecting what we know, right? But just as what Feyre experiences is not what she expected, just going to go ahead and say, not all is what it seems. But, okay, so initially she's like, I'm not going to eat because she's been told this is, if you eat, it's going to be a big thing. There's a whole lot of stuff back and forth here where don't eat the food. He's like, the food's fine. And it's safe. Anyway, all the stuff. Not the most fun, nice conversation here, but they're getting through it. And then we get to meet Lucien.
Yay. I love Lucien.
Do you?
I do.
It's been interesting. I have loved kind of checking out the fandom and seeing people's thoughts of him. I don't think I really thought about him that much. I'm like, he's just this side character.
It's honestly, the fandom was what planted a lot of this in my head because there's so many people who have these huge crushes on Lucien, and I'm like, Lucien? And then when I reread, I'm like, oh, he is adorable. I love him. No, I have a crush on Lucian.
Oh my word. Okay. This chapter though, not one of his finer moments.
No, I'm definitely.
He's not super nice. I mean, okay, very first thing, you're joking. That scrawny thing brought down Andress. So we've already got somebody who's not got great self-esteem, so she gets called scrawny. Thank you, Lucian. Super nice. At which point he then, yeah, she's like, he's making jokes at her expense. Like he's not being super nice here.
No crush on Lucian in this chapter.
Not yet.
Whatsoever.
Not yet. And and he mocks her here with
Bit of an ass.
your eyes are like stars, your hair is like burnished gold, and just I mean, I just get so much like
Yeah.
internal welling up of like frustration on her behalf. Like you just want to throat punch him here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we go through this, and so he says this, but he also after that talks about maybe we should just take a stand. Maybe it's time to say enough. Dump the girl somewhere. Kill her. I don't care. She's nothing but a burden here.
Why did Feyre have to overhear that?
I know.
It's not a helpful thing for her internal self-talk.
It's not. I mean, goodness. And I was just, thinking about this one. I'm like, there's our internal self-talk, and sometimes that can come from all kinds of places. But I don't think anybody just on their own wakes up and develops terrible self-talk.
Yeah. It comes from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere.
And usually from a loud voice outside of you who has some sort of authority in your life.
Yeah. And it just, thinking about like, what are the memories? What are the words that were said? What are the things that we heard, and how a careless word in passing, from a parent that they probably forget the next day, that we latch onto and hold onto, and it becomes, part of that narrative decades later.
Which can be funny the way that plays out in your own parenting later, because my kids genuinely think that the word stupid is a bad word. Like they honestly, like if they hear somebody else say it, they're like, they said the S word. And I've had to explain to them, like, that's not actually, like, it's not a bad word. I just have never let them use that word because that was thrown around a lot in my childhood home of origin,
right?
And so I never wanted them using that word or shut up. Both of them, they those two, stupid and shut up. My kids genuinely, like until a certain age, all believe that that's like the F-bomb. They just said
right.
That. They said that in that movie,
right?
I'm like, no, that's okay. I just don't want you saying it to each other. It's not the way I like for us to talk to each other, but it's not a swear word,
right? But that's the thing. Like I'm like between swear words and words that hurt your soul.
Yeah.
Right. But like having those ones be so significant to you, and then that being off limits in your family, I think is significant. Which, by the way, gosh, I love that we're just putting this all out there on a podcast. Like so much for any pretenses of whatever. Can't wait for the judgment on this one. But we don't have firm lines around like swearing with our kids. But the interesting thing is we were having a conversation about swearing. What that means. Is that real? Like we were just talking about all around it, where it comes from, why people have those kinds of thoughts. And our kids were genuinely confused because really the only time they've heard swearing is for humor.
Yeah, I love that about your family. It's so
we do
different
swear
from every other family I know.
We do swear
mine.
for humor. So they don't have a negative connection to any of those words. But I remember one time I was actually angry and I said something that wasn't really even that bad in terms of a word, but I was angry. And that was like more crushing than anything, like F-bombs they think are hilarious because they've only heard them in a funny context, but something that's a much milder word technically, because like one day I got angry and I said it in anger, like then their spirit is crushed and they have sensitivity to that word, because I was angry. But no, my Nadia, my youngest, when she was, I forget how old she was, maybe 10, she came in and she was like, can I just say all the words? Like all the bad ones? I was like, yep, I'm going to set a timer. I'm like, you've got 1 minute, ready, set, go. And she was like, really? And I think she said like 4 things in rapid succession in like 4 seconds and then like turned bright red and started laughing and couldn't get anything else
Cute.
out.
Yeah, our kids are allowed to say whatever they want as long as they're in the bathroom. So they literally call swear words bathroom words. She's like, is that a bathroom word too? So, but the funny thing is that I didn't think about when they were young enough. I didn't think about drawing a distinction between public restrooms and the bathroom at home.
Oh my word.
So there have been times when the youngest, like 4, would we would get into the public restroom and she'd just start swearing like a sailor. And I'm like, oh, wait. Okay, remember the whole thing about how we don't say them around other people because we don't want to teach them to kids and have them get in trouble, even though we don't get in trouble at our house. Swear words and parenting. So many fun parts of life.
Oh my goodness.
And I was going to say, and that has nothing to do with ACOTAR at all, but there's swear words in here.
Oh my
This
goodness.
has plenty to do with it.
Yeah, but but it's so interesting to see how we, what we experience like influences how we do things now, and what kind of things were said and which kinds of things were hurtful,
Yeah.
Like if the word stupid's thrown around, like that becomes the one that's sensitive. Where I'm like, swearing is not a thing that's going to be a point of sensitivity for our kids at all because they just think it's hysterical. But then I'm always, you have to look back and be like, okay, but what are the things? What are the things? And there are some. And I, being a life coach and being a person who does not want my children to grow into people pleasing, we have very much trained them, and we are working on directly communicating how they feel about things. And so the nice thing is, I know they're very good at it. If I say anything that they don't like, they're pretty good at like, when you said that, I like.
So good.
And it is so good. I honestly I'll tell stories about it all day long to be dramatic about it because I like doing that. But I really am glad. Like, I'm glad that they're older and I'm glad that they do feel comfortable. Like, if I say something that they don't like or that makes them uncomfortable, they do tell me. I definitely have had days though where I'm like, I get why my parents were like, just don't tell me, when it's like 6 things in one day and I'm like, I can't say anything. I can't say anything right. Yeah, but training them to work through that. And it's so great because I'm like, if I've said something that was hurtful, for them to just come and for me to be able to, in that moment, talk it through and apologize and work through things. Like there was, something that we had like joked about in our family, and my daughter had joked about it and we had all joked about it. And because she joked about it, we all thought it was funny. Because she acted like it was funny. Mm-hmm. And then one day she was like, she's like, whenever I say it about myself, it feels funny. But when you say it about me, it hurts. And I was like, that is valid.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't have known that if she hadn't told me. And I could have thought like, oh my gosh, this is like our family joke and it's super playful. And really, I'm hurting her. And I was so thankful that, she was brave enough to say something. And I try to do my best to always like praise them and thank them and be like, I know that was probably uncomfortable. I know it was hard. And, working through it, but teaching them to speak up whenever something does feel hurtful so it doesn't become these festering wounds.
So good.
Tell you what, it's definitely been a growing experience for me though.
Yes.
Because the first thing I want to do is defend myself.
Yeah.
Which is not the point.
Yeah.
No, so I've got to grow so much.
So to quote our friend Lucian, then you've got your work cut out for you, old son. I just loved that line. You've got your work cut out for you, old son. I don't know why Lucian is referring to our as yet unnamed beast / golden-haired man as old son, but I think that's hilarious when he says that.
Oh my goodness. It really is. Oh, Lucian.
Lucian.
He does bring in some comedic stuff, which, by the way, is kind of fun. We get a little setup for their relationship at the end. So Farah, this isn't going well. She's not really ready to eat, so she goes to what does she do? She goes to basically get cleaned up.
Yes.
I think. And how do you say this? How do you pronounce this? Our servant's name, Alice.
Oh, I just called her Alice.
Alice.
I mean, it could be Alice. I never even thought about it.
If anybody knows,
ALIS.
if anybody knows,
I
please
know
tell
there
us in the
is a
comments.
pronunciation guide of all things Sarah J. Maas somewhere. I still have. I haven't Googled it.
So
I'm sure it's there.
we'll have to look that. But I love this. She's like, bathed me, cut my hair, and then plucked me until I felt like a chicken being prepared for dinner. Like, for all I knew, I might very well be their next meal. But yeah, she's been in survival mode.
Yeah.
It's like we ain't got time to deal with eyebrows.
Sounds so nice. I want to
Right?
go be groomed so bad. Oh, it sounds so nice.
That's the quote of the
Weekend at
day.
the spa.
I want to go be groomed.
Yes.
Like, somebody just do it for me.
Yes.
Right?
So good.
Oh my goodness. But so she gets cleaned up. Her poor clothes are falling apart. She doesn't get to wear those.
And then she won't put a dress on.
Won't put the dress on.
So good. Because, and I love that the fox masked one is like, because she won't be able to kill us. Wait, is that in this chapter, or is that a spoiler from next chapter?
I think that's the next one.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. But
we know that's what she's thinking anyway.
she's coming up. But yeah, I mean, for her, this is, it's super practical. She can't run in a dress.
Kill them and then run, or just plain run.
Yeah.
And run through the forest
Yeah.
in a dress.
Everything. I mean, everything at this point is,
Still survival.
yeah. Which again, I think is really practical, because I've read some of these stories where somebody shows up, they show up in these places and they're just like, not, how do I say this? They're not as freaked out as they ought to be.
Yeah.
Like, I've read stories like this. I mean, there's one, I'm reading through one right now, and I'm like, she genuinely ought to be a little bit more freaked out than she is by what's happening. And it's just interesting to see, like, this is such a more realistic picture if you were actually captured. Like,
is,
you're not
yeah.
going to let your guard down for any.
Yeah,
any-
and I get like irritated with her because it sounds so beautiful. I'm like, why does she keep thinking about leaving? Like, she needs to just enjoy it. And it's so dumb because obviously she's not going to be able to enjoy herself with her nervous system in the state that it's at in her mind, where she's been captured and she doesn't know what's happening. She thinks her family's starving back home.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Yes, it's very realistic.
Yeah, so she's
For a fantasy romance novel, it's terribly realistic in parts.
it is. It really is. Okay, and so in the next chapter, we're gonna have more interaction with these guys. She's getting a moment here, but one of the other things that stood out to me was right here in the middle of the end of this chapter, where she's in this new place and for whatnot. We have this segue into her previous life, and we have one more place where we look back at her memories. And she talks about she says, I was too young to remember much before my father's downfall. He tolerated me enough to allow me to loiter about his offices and sometimes even explain various goods and their worth, the details of which I'd long since forgotten. My time in his offices, full of the scents of exotic spices and the music of foreign tongues, made up the majority of my few happy memories. And, and this is tying into her just understanding that, she says that I didn't need to know the worth of everything in this room to understand that the emerald curtains alone, silk with gold velvet, could have fed us for a lifetime. So we're getting a really practical picture of how wealthy these people are, like, and how rich this is and how much of a divide there is between her life and what she's experiencing here. But I love that they tied this in, because we just spent time talking about how rough Feyre had it. Yeah. We've got suffering, we've got starving, we've got loss of wealth, we've got, her dad's legs crushed, him falling into depression, stuff's not great with her sisters, like there's threats near the border, like it seems like everything is awful. Then she's like, yeah, but there were happy memories in there. There was that one good summer, like there were these things. And I don't know, it was kind of a fun moment, because I think you come out of those chapters and it can be easy to think like everything was bad, but it's like it's never everything.
Yeah.
It's never
always some
everything.
little nugget in there.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this gave me a little insight into how Feyre thinks, because this is so not how I was seeing it at all. She said, I had to get out, had to get back. That promise to my mother, cold and vain as she was all I had. So she thinks of that promise to take care of her family and to keep them safe and fed and all that. She thinks of that promise as like a possession, like that's a treasure to her, that she has this promise. And I would just never have thought of it that way. So I love that Sarah gives us that little insight into her. Like she's holding on to that promise. It's all she has. Jeez, what a life.
I have some notes for that in future chapters. It's me, so of course I have thoughts. But yes, it's that, and that plays out, for the next little bit. It's such a significant thing. Well, and I think part of it too. Okay, so this became her whole world, right? So like she loved painting and that had to go. Even like noticing color, it's like that's not survival. Like when you go to survival, like over time you cut out any of those things that aren't significant until surviving kind of was all that she had, right? And it's not because at one point there wasn't more, but because her world got narrowed down to this. And I do think that that's significant, because what we're going to see, and what happens for people is like, then there's an opportunity to have more, and it's very hard to open back up to other things. It's very hard to, because it becomes like this is the one thing that I know. This is what everything's been built on. This is the thing. But yeah, this promise, it's a significant part of a huge part of her journey, and breaking out of that, it's not easy.
No. You've got your work cut out for you, old son. Fox-masked friend.
Good segue. We all do if we're going to break out of those cycles.
That's right.
We've all got our work cut out for us, old son.
Well,
oh my goodness.
Just about wrap up chapter 6 for us.
I think that's it for chapter 6. Yeah, so at the end of it, she's plucked and cleaned and dressed, and she was gonna ask some more questions, and instead she'd finished her hair and opened the door, and now she's getting ready to go back out to our, what are we calling him? Golden-haired high fae and Lucian.
The fox-masked friend.
Fox-masked friend. And we'll get to see more of them in the next chapter.
Next. Thank you for joining us here on A Court of Transformation and Awakening. And if you haven't already, make sure to go over to ACOTA, that's ACOTAA.circle.so, where you can tell us your thoughts and feelings and experiences of these chapters. And you can dive into the chats and get involved, get to know people, dive into one of our deeper experiences if you want. You can do it all at acota.circle.so. We'll see you there.
Bye, guys.
Bye.